Good morning all. Dear students, we are at the end of the induction program. This is day 6. Today from 10 to 10:45 English communication by Professor Gloria Albert. 10:45 to 11:30 Universal Human Values by Vinod Kulkarni sir, Dr. Vinod Kulkarni. And at last 12 to 12:45 about online and offline classes by Dr. Anita Nandurkar. Now I request our English professor Gloria Albert madam to discuss about the English communication. Over to you, madam.
Well, good morning to all of you. Thank you, Matad sir, for introducing me. And also warm greetings for 2020-21. Dear students, as I already told you, defined the word communication in the theoretical class previously that we had. Before we could start with how important the communication is, why communication, and when we talk about communication, language plays a role, and we talk about the language, English is most important, not only for an engineer, but for all the professions. Fine. So let us start with the word communication. Yes. So what communication is exactly, and how we define it or derive, the word is derived from. As I've told you, the word communication is derived from a Latin word communicare, which means to share. What to share? Not just information, but also the feeling, attitude, intentions, actions, experiences, and ideas. So communication does not just happen. No, communication is a conscious process. Why do we call it as a process? The word process itself defined as that it keeps happening. No, the process is something which always keeps going on. So that's why we call it as a communication cycle. So wherein with lot many important components in the process, like you need a receiver, you need a sender. No, there are components. We use a channel to exchange our ideas, exchange our attitudes, exchange your feelings, isn't it? So communication happens with the compatibility of verbal and non-verbal, where we require words as well as some expressions, and we define it very well as a communication, isn't it? So when it comes to the engineering process, or how important as English is, why English for engineers? Fine. See, we have defined it into qualities and a rating system. So this is a survey conducted by the National Association of Employers, not just in institutions or the universities, but it has been analyzed, the data has been analyzed, and they've been rated, the qualities have been rated by the National Association of Employers. What employers means? The one who recruit you, the one who give you an employment job, isn't it? So they have rated these communication skills at the scale of 5. That means at the 5 marks at the rate of 5, isn't it? So now, what are the qualities that the employers look in the engineers or the freshers is? The communication skills. It could be your honesty and integrity. It could be the motivation. It could be your interpersonal skills, or it could be your strong working ethics, or it could be your team spirit, that is team working skills, analytical skills, and as well as the domain knowledge, that is at the grade average, isn't it? See, when all these qualities have you have been evaluated on all these qualities, fine, the engineer should possess with all these qualities, and they're rated on to the scale of 5. So here you can find, see, here you have a slide where you can find all the qualities and the ratings which are 5. So if you see at the domain knowledge of an engineer, it's just a 3.6. rating, fine. When you look into the analytical skills, you find it into 4.4, and when it comes to the teamwork skills, it is 4.5. When you look about these strong works, that means your technical knowledge as well as ethics, you find it as 4.5. And when it comes to your interpersonal skill is nothing but interaction between various people, into various psychosocial contexts. So that also stands somewhere around 4.5. And then comes the motivation. There also you find 4.5. When it comes to your honesty and integrity, how ethically you work into a profession, as well as what integrity, with what integration that you work into the people, because engineers does not work simply in the common forum, isn't it? You work into a multidisciplinary people, so there you require your honesty and integrity. So that is also scaled down to 4.7. But when it comes to your communication skills, see, the rating stands at the higher when it compared to the other qualities in the engineers, isn't it? So here the communication skill is about 4.8. So that means what? There is an importance of communication into the process. That means an engineer should always have a command. It should always be an effective communicator, isn't it? So there it stands at the higher grade or higher rate that the engineer or a professional should always possess with an effective communication skills. That's where I'm here to tell you why communication or why English. When we talk about the communication, language plays a role, isn't it? Even in our day-to-day life, it could be your regional language, it could be your mother tongue, or it could be any vernacular languages. We always should communicate it in a very effective manner. So why effectiveness, as I've told you in the previous session of mine, isn't it? So communication should happen actually. Communication decades ago was like just to exchange your messages, exchange information, that's it. But now the science and technology have brought into an change, overall change into the process of communication. So now it does requires a frequent of time to get connected with the people, because the innovations in the technology have made it more firm into the palm of our hands, isn't it? So now communication should happen actually. I've even explained you in the previous session of mine what exactly how actual communication is. Actual communication is just not putting an information, but whether it is a pleasure or an inclination always happens with an effective communication. That's why when we talk about the communication, language plays a vital role, and language is a tool which bridges up the gap between the people, bridges up the gap between the induced experiences or the scattered into the geographical area of the globe, isn't it? That's why communication is more important in an engineer. Why? When we talk about communication, we always talk about the English language. Even though we have come from vernacular backgrounds, even though we have come from a good reputed English medium schools, most of the time when it comes to the communication or when it comes to the English communication or English language speaking, we always have a certain wrong assumptions. We have certain hesitation. We always try to distance ourselves from language learning or language speaking, isn't it? So that's where let me tell you why English for engineers, or why English is more important in this global world. Fine. Let me tell you the very importance of English. Why English is said to be a lingua franca. See, now English is now a global lingua franca, but was a first Western Germanic language spoken in medieval England, and currently it's a first language for the majority of the population in several countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, Canada, a few Caribbean nations, and the New Zealand. So what is the word lingua franca? Lingua franca means a commonly spoken language by millions and millions of people. So this is one of the first very important part that we need to know. Why? Because there are um, 375 million people speak English as a first language, and 750 million speak English as a second language. That means there are millions and millions of people who are aware of speaking or aware of English language, isn't it? So why this is required? Because we are now into a global market. Now we are into a global competition, isn't it? So English is always said to be a window of the world through which you can communicate with the people, through which you can have a tie-up with the people, through which you can have a relationship with the other international companies or international businesses, isn't it? That's why English plays a role, and it is said to be an official language. Why official language? Because it has it has very special status in at least 17 countries of the globe who have adopted English to be as their official language. Official language in the means is it's a medium of business, not just only a medium of education, but also it's a medium of business. That's where English plays a role. And as an engineers, as I've told you, we'll be working into a multidisciplinary people. That means into the varied culture, varied blocked cultures, isn't it? That's where we require one common language, because we all of us know India. Our country is in unity diversity, because we speak number of languages, hundred of languages in our country, but we need to make it a common denominator of a language. That's where we adopt English to be an official language. And why English language is so important here. English learners ought to learn English to cultivate ground for communication socially with others and to become a part of global economy. As I've told you, we are all into a global market, and we have a tie-up with international businesses. That's why English is so important to learn. Fine. Next is why English. See, English communication helps in collaboration with international affairs to compete the global need. It is always said that when you are in a Rome, be a Roman when you are in a Rome. That means what? Not to Esternize yourself. Just you need to change yourself. Just you need to change yourself and know the affairs, the internal affairs, or know the internal or external fairness in the business. That's where it is said that English communication may help you to collaborate with the other people in the international affairs. Then business crossing the national boundaries require effective communication to manage the law and customs of the business practices. To know the proper ethics of the businesses, you have to be into a common denominator. That's where English is required to have a tie-up with other international companies. Fine. So next is why English. English is also essential in the field of education. We all of us have understood this, isn't it? Because it is dominating language in the sciences and technology. Most of the research and studies, you find the information to be written in English language. See, even anything, as I've told you, the science and technology has brought into a change, in the life of the people, because now communication was just to exchange, decades ago, but now it is not that. Actual communication is happening. You always expect for an effectiveness in your process, isn't it? Why? Because the communication process, you have a word into your palms now, isn't it? Anything that you require, you try to Google it, then you find it out. Whatever it is, the information is in English. That's why how English has played an essentiality in the field of education. Next, why English for engineers? See, as I've told you, now how English was important, why English is important. Now, fine, let me tell you why English for engineers. Fine. See, dear students, all of you are going to be a professionals now, and you're more excited to be a professional now, isn't it? Many of you have opted for many branches now. Some civil, some mechanical. Some have taken admission for your electro communication and electrical and electronics, computer science, and so kind, isn't it? So even though you're working for the core stream, but when you and you have a dreamt to work for a well-reputed companies, isn't it? Always see, we engineers always look forward towards a corporate sector, isn't it? So therein, why language, why English is so important for engineers. So in a student social life, English language is most important. Why? Because it helps you to build a strong relationship and better understanding among the fellow students and the peers. See, it could create a bond between and good relationship between your fellow members. That means with your students or with the peer groups. Why? Because for the better understanding, I've told you, be a Roman. When you're in Rome, that means what? You try to put into your feet into the shoes of others and to understand how comfortable or uneasy the things are. You will very very closely understand the very culture or the working culture of the people, or understand the pulse of the industries. So that's why English is very important for an engineer to better understand the fellow students as well as the peers. And it is said, for a success in any field, one has to know and understand and communicate effectively. To know, understand, and communicate effectively. See, for example, most of the time it is said that communicate comprehension. So understanding, no, understanding means comprehension. Comprehension is a weak input in the language learning. See, we do not learn a language to understand. We learn a language and then we always try to comprehend it properly to make it more effective. That means your written as well as your spoken English or language should be correct. That's why we always try to comprehend. First, we learn a language. A very good example is that the very first language that we learn is our home language, isn't it? Home language means what? The mother tongue, what we call it as. Yes. Why are we so effective in our first language? We learn this language at the very age of 2 or 3, wherein we are able to understand, comprehend the grammar part of it. That's where it is said, when we learn a language, understanding is a weak, comprehension is a weak input. We do not learn a language to understand. We learn a language and then we apply it very properly for the effectiveness of a language. So here it is said, the very success of an engineer is always lies on the effective communication. That means what? Even if you're very good at your communication skills, even if you're very strong at your technical skills, if you're ineffective in your communication process, then your success lies into the bottom level. You cannot grow because you are unable to share your ideas. You are unable to share your experience. That because you are an not good communicator. In the era of liberalization, privatization, and globalization, communication skill is a key to success. As I've told you that in the era, we are all into the privatization and globalization, isn't it? As well as in the liberalization. So communication plays a role, and communication skill, you should always possess such qualities where you are able to understand as well as enhance your skills. Next, English language is now a bridge language for international business, technology, and researchers. See, most of the researchers today, most of the work in the research always lies in where you have an information in English. So English is a language which bridges up the gap and always helps us to have a better business into international affairs as well as into the technology and researchers. And also it is said about 1.8 million people speak and the number is still rising. So every day, every now and then we find people adopting this language as an official as well. English is said to be an universal language today. Universal does not mean only the Commonwealth countries or people rarely play, or some students tell me that whenever it comes to the language speaking, they say that why English is very easy to learn. That's where no language is easy or difficult. It is all the perspective of a learner, how he learns a language. Fine. So then engineers today have communicated with their counterparts across the globe among most of the professionals who belong to the different culture and linguistic background. It is said that engineers today communicate, not only communicate in their own, with their own internal affairs, but also with the counterpart across the globe. That's where English is more important to build up, to have a proper, to bridge up a gap in the professionals who belong to the different cultures and linguistic backgrounds, right? So now I hope you have understood what is the importance of English language. How to improve your language? Most of the students come to me saying, we have come from a vernacular background, say we are unable to cope with the language, or we are unable to enhance this language. Nothing is difficult. Impossible also says I am possible. If you practice, then you can improve, have a command, you can also have a proficiency over the language. I can witness so many students from the vernacular background today working for the well-reputed companies with higher positions. So it is their effort and hard work that they have proved themselves and add command over their languages. Fine. So how to improve your English communication skill? These tips are not only for the students from the vernacular background, but also for the students who have come from the well-reputed and English medium schools. How can we bridge up this gap? Why most of the time we distance ourselves from English speaking? That's because we need to change our attitude. Our attitude is what? I conveyed the message, it has reached the person. So we are least to bother how correct or incorrect my spoken or written language was. So we need to change our attitude. We need to change our attitude as we accept that English language is is a lingua franca. We also need to admit it. Then we can try to have a command over the language. And next thing is we can minimalize our speech. We need to resist the minimalism in our speech. If we don't resist minimalism in our speech, then we cannot have a command over the language. So how to resist? Why are we minimalizing our speech? That's because we in the absence of self-imposed standard of excellence. So we do not have an excellency over the language. We hesitate to speak this language. That's where I always resist minimalism in the language. Resisting minimalism, I always have a minimalism in the language. How to resist minimalism? Try to express yourselves. Try to express. If somebody asks you, do you confine your secrets with your friends? You most of the time say, answer it saying yes or no. No, that should not happen. You need to resist this minimalism. Try to explain it. Why do we not? Tell him, yeah, I do not conflict my secrets with my sister or a brother, but I do it with my friends. So you need to always have an expression attitude. Then you can resist minimalism in the language. And more importantly, you should always have a localization. That means practice. So you should practice. Never mind, even if you're wrong. We are all lifelong learners, isn't it? No person is very perfect in the beginning. So we learn. Practice makes man perfect. We're very much acquainted with this verses, isn't it? So you can practice your English language. Never mind, even if you're wrong. So you have a chance to correct. That is where we say spotting of error, deletion of error. So it happens, isn't it? We are all human beings and we are all lifelong learners. We may learn through our mistakes. So please feel free to have vocalization. That means practice, energetic output. Most of the students come to me saying, Madam, I read novels, I read so many books, but I'm unable to I am unable to speak a good English. Fine. They say that I come across so many words, I come across so many verses, I read so many books. No, these are just an input to you. Fine. See what you do once you save your file, you save it, no? We save it. So what we do is we name the file, isn't it? So likewise, even in the language learning, just reading may not help you. You may need to get it into an energetic output. That means there should always be an vocalization. Only when you have an vocalization, that means only when you practice use those verses or those words or those sentences, then you find an installation into a human brain. So practice makes man perfect. You also need to keep practicing speaking English in your day-to-day life. Right? So there you can find an installation into your corpuses. And the third thing where I would like to tell you here is you always need to install your corpuses from the authentic sources. So we human beings have many social contacts. You know, we call it as a social psycho contact. So we come in contact with so many people. Fine. So, but you need to know as an adult learner from where should I install my English language. You cannot install your English language from somewhere it is with the low domain. That means the person who does not, where the language, where English is not being verified or standardized, isn't it? So you need to install your English from the authentic sources, from the correct usage of language. You should know how correct or incorrect the language is. Then you can verify and then install, so that you will not hesitate to speak a language, because you will have nounces and you will have n number of formatted sentence installed into your corpus as a learner. Please do avoid installing your corpuses from the non-authentic sources. If you install from the non-authentic sources, then you will always distance yourself from English language, because you will feel that you will end up making an error. So if you follow these tips, if you follow these importance to improve your language, then I could promise you that you will have a command over your language, right? And you should always follow the pronunciation. So we will learn in this, as you all know, you will be, you have this as one subject, English as one subject for both your semester, first semester and second semester. So you will learn so many things, and you will try to have a command. You will inculcate these qualities, not only communication, but also various soft qualities, soft skills like team spirit, team working spirit, fine, and ethics, knowing certain ethics, how to analyze, problem solving. So all this you will be learning as a soft skill in these 2 semesters. Hope all of you have understood. All of you have
Yes, ma'am.
understood?
Ma'am.
Pardon? Hope all of you have understood.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are there any queries?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any queries? Any questions? Friends, are there any queries?
Ma'am.
Yeah, please let me know. Thanks. Are there any queries?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Yeah. Let us
No,
watch this
ma'am.
video and try to understand why English for engineers. How it could help us being an effective, being an professional, right?
There is an obvious point that more people speak Chinese, more nations have Spanish as their mother tongue, but realistically, English is the language of choice throughout the world today. It has become an international language due to being the language of trade, communication, science.
ಶೇರ್ ಆಗೋದು ಅದಾದರೆ ಶೇರ್ ಆಗೋದು ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಐತೆ ಶೇರ್ ಆಗೋದು
Sitting off.
If you speak English, you won't need to rely on translations, subtitles, anymore to enjoy your favorite books, songs, films, and TV shows.
Hi.